Joan of Arc is not remembered for a quiet life. She did not leave behind volumes of spiritual writings, nor did she found a religious order. She did not heal the sick with her hands or vanish into the obscurity of monastic walls. Instead, she marched, she bled, she testified, she was burned. And in doing so, she became one of the most extraordinary saints of all time. An illiterate peasant girl who led armies, endured unjust trial, and died with the name of Jesus on her lips. The Church canonized her not merely for what she suffered, but for how she lived, with radical trust in God's voice, unwavering love for her people, and steadfast refusal to betray her conscience. In a time when both church and state mistrusted the idea of a young woman claiming divine authority, Joan of Arc obeyed the call anyway. She did not ask for permission to be holy. She simply was. Today, she stands as the patron saint of France, of soldiers, of prisoners, of those ridiculed for their faith, and of young women called to courage. She is invoked by those wrongly accused, by those fighting for their homeland, and by those who want to follow God's will no matter the cost. Her legacy stretches across centuries and cultures, transcending political and ideological lines. Why? Because she reminds the world that sanctity does not always whisper, it sometimes shouts truth into chaos. Joan was born in 1412 in Domrémy, a small village in northeastern France during the Hundred Years' War, a brutal, generations-long conflict between England and France that devastated the land and its people. From an early age, Joan was known to be pious, simple, and hardworking. She did not read or write, but she knew her faith. She prayed, went to Mass, and listened. And then, one day, she heard something that changed her life, a voice. She would later testify that Saints Michael the Archangel, Catherine of Alexandria, and Margaret of Antioch appeared to her, giving her a divine mission to drive out the English invaders and bring the Dauphin, Charles VII, to be crowned king at Reims. For any grown man, this would have seemed impossible. For a teenager, laughable. But Joan was not interested in what seemed reasonable. She was interested in obedience. Obedience is a word often misunderstood. It is not passive. It is not mindless. In Joan's life, obedience was the foundation of her strength. She did not claim power for herself. She submitted to a higher one. And that submission gave her the authority to speak, to act, to lead. With no military training, she traveled across war-torn lands to reach the royal court. Her conviction and purity of purpose were so compelling that even seasoned nobles listened. Her presence, her confidence, and her spiritual clarity convinced hardened commanders to give her command. It was not her strategy that earned their respect. It was her moral force. She dressed in armor, but never renounced her femininity. She cut her hair to fit the role of a soldier, but did not become androgynous or disoriented in her identity. She remained entirely herself, a young woman called by God to fight, not with hatred, but with love for her country and a longing for peace. Her love for France was not political, it was spiritual. She believed that France had a mission in the world, and that it strayed from God. Her call was to bring it back. Joan's military success stunned the world. She lifted the siege of Orleans in just 9 days. Her leadership turned the tide of the war. She carried a banner with the names of Jesus and Mary, urging the soldiers to confession and prayer before battle. She did not carry a sword to kill. Her weapon was faith. She was wounded, but kept fighting. She rode into danger not for glory, but because she believed God had asked her to do it. And when she succeeded in bringing Charles to Reims for coronation, she asked for no reward. Her mission, she believed, had been fulfilled. But peace did not come. Joan continued to fight, but eventually she was captured by Burgundian allies of the English. They sold her to the English for a large sum. She was imprisoned, isolated, humiliated, and eventually put on trial for heresy. Her enemies could not defeat her on the battlefield, so they tried to destroy her through false accusations. Her trial was a farce, conducted without legal fairness or ecclesiastical integrity. Yet throughout, she remained steadfast. She was interrogated by dozens of theologians and clerics, most of whom tried to trap her or confuse her. Yet she answered with extraordinary intelligence and discernment. When asked if she believed she was in God's grace, she famously answered, "If I am not, may God put me there, and if I am, may God so keep me." It was a theologically precise answer that baffled her accusers and demonstrated a wisdom far beyond her years or education. Eventually, the court condemned her to death. She was declared a heretic and burned at the stake in Rouen in 1431. She was just 19 years old. Her last word was Jesus. 25 years later, the church reviewed her case and declared her innocent. In 1920, nearly 5 centuries after her martyrdom, Pope Benedict XV declared her a saint. Why does the church hold her up as a saint? Not simply because she died for her beliefs, but because she lived with heroic virtue. She exercised prudence, justice, fortitude, and temperance in ways that far surpassed human expectation. Her courage was not recklessness. Her obedience was not delusion. Her purity was not fragility. It was conviction. She was grounded in the reality of suffering and yet refused to compromise her conscience. Joan of Arc is not a myth. She is not a symbol of nationalism or rebellion. She is a real woman who endured loneliness, betrayal, public mockery, and violent death without ever denying what God had told her. She shows that holiness is not reserved for scholars or mystics. It belongs to anyone who is willing to say yes to God and carry that yes into the fire. Many people know her for her quotes, but often they miss the weight behind them. When she said, "I am not afraid, I was born to do this," it was not a slogan. It was a declaration in the face of overwhelming odds. She did not mean she had no fear, she meant she chose mission over fear. When she said, "Act and God will act," she was not just expressing optimism. She was proclaiming faith in divine providence, that obedience would move heaven to respond. Her life is a challenge to anyone who excuses cowardice as caution. She reminds the world that to follow God will cost something, and sometimes it will cost everything. But the fruit of that faithfulness is eternal. Her impact did not die with her. Her memory ignited hearts. Her legacy inspired saints, generals, and artists. Her example stands for every person who has been dismissed, doubted, or destroyed by unjust powers and still held on to God. She is the patron saint of prisoners because she knew what it meant to be held without hope of release. She is the patron of soldiers because she showed that valor can be born from virtue, not violence. She is the patron of France because she gave her life for its spiritual and physical freedom. She is the patron of young women because she proved that femininity and leadership are not in conflict. They are, in fact, allies. Joan of Arc teaches the world what it means to lead without pride, to obey without fear, and to suffer without bitterness. Her strength was not in her sword, it was in her surrender to God. In a world that often confuses freedom with self-will, Joan teaches obedience. In a culture that glorifies power, she teaches sacrifice. In an age of doubt, she teaches clarity. And in the face of cruelty, she teaches dignity.